Hello, I'm Ken Harris, and we're going to do a typical Australiana scene today. The tools I'm using, just a small knife to mix the paint together, a brush about 1.5 centimetres wide, a little detail brush, and a fan brush. Now, I'm going to start with a little bit of white and Prussian blue. Take a little white and a little bit of Prussian blue. And the board itself has got a thin coat of medium on the face of it, but I am also going to pick up a tiny little bit of medium to help spread the paint. And we'll run across the top of that sky. As we get down a little bit lower, we may darken this a tiny bit, but as we get down further in the painting, I'm going to change to a little bit of pink through it. I will take a little bit of pure Prussian blue and run it across the top of that sky to darken the top of the sky as it is in nature, of course. And a tiny bit more medium to make that flow. And as we get down to the lower part of the sky, I'm going to leave quite a few holes in the blue paint so that we can put the pink into it. I'm going to wash that brush, and I normally put the paint that's left over up the top of the palette. A lot of people actually throw it away, but it can be very handy for you at a later stage in the painting. I always recommend that you keep it, and that's just a little bit too much red in that, so we'll take a little more white and mix up a pink and a speck of orange in it, a little bit more white. That's about what we need. I'm going to run this pinkish orangey colour at the bottom of the blue and up through the blue in general. Any thin little bits of blue that we have on there, we can sneak a little bit of this orangey pink in. And that's about all we need. You can, if you want to, turn this sort of combination of colours into a little bit of cloud if you want to. You can form this orangey pink into cloud shapes if you so desire, which I strongly recommend. That's a wonderful way to fill the sky, and you can even go to the extreme of putting shadows, etc., underneath the clouds as well if you want to. I'm going to just clean that orangey pink off. I hope you can see there. Okay, and we'll go to, I'm going to take a little bit of that blue again, but I'm going to add a little red to it and also a tiny bit more blue. We want a purplish colour. That's a spectrum red, wonderful colour, beautiful colour. And I'm going to run these background hills in here. Could have a tiny bit more red in it. Always treat red with great reservations because it can just simply take over your painting if you're not careful. That's more the colour we want. And I'm stroking it away at roughly a 45-degree angle. You can use short strokes to get that hill in, but we'll run that up there like so. But I find that if you stroke it away at about a 45-degree angle, and providing the hill is not too high, you can more or less get away with with one stroke. However, it is always advisable to come back and put some texture into any of these hills. You don't want just one straight brush stroke in them. Texture is terribly important, and also highlighting. You can run a little bit of highlight down on some of these hills. If you come along to one of my workshops, and they're advertised on my website, Ken Harris Art School, you can come along to the workshops in your city, and you can learn all these little tricks at the workshop, of course, and I recommend that you do that. Now, up on this hill here, I'm going to put this one in this area here. I'm going to run in a little bit of burnt sienna or Australian red gold. You could use Australian red gold. That is actually Australian red gold. This is burnt sienna. Because Australian red gold has got a very high percentage of burnt sienna in it, it actually looks very similar. And in fact, when you have it on the palette, it sometimes takes you all your time to sort of see, depending on what the lighting conditions are, it takes you all your time to see whether you're actually picking up Australian red gold or burnt sienna. But if you run that in there like so, and then I'll just wipe that knife, and we'll come back with a little bit of white with burnt sienna, and I want to get some texture on this hill, so we'll just roughen that up a little bit with this texture. We could make that darker. It's better. Get a little bit of that on the knife and run down the hill at a little bit of a angle. We don't want to go straight down, although if it were a cliff face, of course, you could come straight down, but only just touch the surface of the board to get this broken texture. That's what we're after. And I'm using a little bit of this lighter stuff to roughen it up even further. A little bit on the underneath the blade of the knife, and run down that hill. Now, we have a hill here in the foreground here, running up here. We'll get this bloke in, and also this other guy over here, which is a greenish burnt sienna or yellow ochre. You could use either burnt sienna or yellow ochre, but in this particular case I think we'll go for a little bit of yellow ochre with a little bit of yellow green. Very nice combination. Now, I didn't wash the brush, and just remember that you can overwash brushes. Only wash it if you really need to wash it. I have a friend who actually does a painting without washing the brush at all. I don't recommend that for the average student, because you can get yourself into an awful lot of difficulty with that. Now, I'm going to just darken that a little bit, put a little bit of Payne's grey into it, and just put a little more green there. That is yellow green, and there's this hill here coming down here, which comes over it, is considerably darker. Run this bloke in here. Again, texture on the face of this hill is important. Come back with a little bit of paint on your brush and work up a bit of texture. You can come back here and run a little texture into the main hill itself. You can come back and put some vegetation on top of it if you so desire. You can come back to the top of this and run a little vegetation, and in fact the photograph I have indicates that there is in fact vegetation coming right down the side of this hill. I hesitate in putting this in because You can get yourself into a lot of difficulty with it, but there is certainly vegetation on the top of this hill. Now you can highlight that with a little yellow-green. There's a whole range of colours you can highlight with, but a little yellow-green is as good as anything. You may need to come back and work on the cliff a tiny bit more. Just get something that restore the cliff underneath here again. Picked up a little blue paint there. It doesn't matter. Now, the ground itself, I'm going to wash the brush for this because I want to change to a combination of yellow ochre and firstly what I'll do is I'll run this blue in here. There's a little creek runs up here. Run that little creek in there. Could have done this while I was doing the sky, but nevertheless, really doesn't matter. I'm going to darken it a little at the end here so that it pushes the eye into the painting. And that's all very carefully explained in the various workshops that I run. We have run one coming up in 2012 in Perth and Melbourne and Sydney, so come along to those, it's all explained to you. Now I'm going to go to the yellow ochre and run this yellow ochre in here. We could use a tiny bit of white. Pencil lines there. Agitate the pencil lines with your brush to get rid of them. Little yellow ochre. Creep up underneath that hill there. And how easy that is. It's just, I'm going to change to a little bit of Australian red gold down here. Run a little bit of Australian red gold and I'm going to slope it down to the riverbank. Picked up a bit of blue there, it doesn't matter. I'm going to slope this down to the riverbank as well. Gently, gently sloping down there. And we've got to get all our reflections and shadows in here. You can get some reflection in here. You can use a combination of burnt umber and burnt sienna to get a nice dark edge on this river. Just stroke it or run it to nothing up the end there. Keep your strokes nice and vertical here. The reflections coming straight towards you, and stroke it sideways very, very gently. And that's about what we need. All right, now we're going to go to a break in a few seconds, and then we'll come back and finish the painting off and run a frame around it, and hopefully it'll look $1 million. So we'll go to a break, and after the break we'll finish the painting off. I'll see you after the break. Thank you.